Rain tapped gently against the small kitchen window as Claire stirred a spoonful of instant coffee into her chipped "World's Best Mom" mug. The words were faded now, almost unreadable, but she still used it every morning. It had been a gift from her son, Jeremy, when he was in 3rd grade, back when things felt simpler, and life hadn't yet unfolded into the long string of bills, layoffs, and broken promises it had become. At 39, Claire's world had shrunk to the bare bones of survival. She worked part-time at a local diner in the mornings and cleaned office buildings at night. Her hands always smelled faintly of bleach and fryer oil. The house was quiet, too quiet, since Jeremy had left for college upstate 2 months ago. He called every Sunday, cheerful and optimistic, completely unaware that his mother was 3 months behind on the mortgage and had maxed out every credit card just to keep him enrolled. That morning, Claire stopped at the gas station on her way to the diner. Her car, with a cracked windshield, sputtered like it was ready to die in protest. She pumped in $15, just enough to get her through the week. Inside the station, she grabbed a bottled water and a pack of gum. As she dug in her purse for exact change, her eyes landed on the row of lottery tickets beneath the counter. Bright colors. Bold fonts. Promises no one believed in. Still, something compelled her. Maybe it was the way her boss had screamed at her yesterday for forgetting to refill the ketchup bottles. Maybe it was the eviction notice folded tightly in her glove box. Or maybe it was just hope, reckless and desperate. "Can I get a quick pick?" she asked, surprising herself. The teenager behind the register barely looked up. "Powerball or Mega?" She hesitated. "Mega." The ticket printed with a whir and a click. Claire slid it into her purse like it was nothing, like she didn't suddenly feel ridiculous for even bothering. She didn't check the numbers that night. Or the night after. It wasn't until Wednesday, 3 days later, when she was lying in bed too exhausted to sleep, that she remembered. She pulled the crumpled ticket from her coat pocket and searched the winning numbers on her phone. Her heart didn't skip a beat. It stopped. The numbers matched. Every single one. She stared at the screen, blinking hard. Her mouth went dry, her vision blurry. She checked again, then again. She even read the fine print, assuming there had to be a catch. But there wasn't. Claire had just won $1 million. She didn't scream. She didn't jump. Instead, she sat in the silence, the weight of years of poverty pressing down harder than ever before. And then, she cried. Not just for the money. But for all the moments she had carried hope like a burden, dragging it behind her through every locked door and dead end. The next morning, she drove to the state lottery office in a daze, her hands shaking on the steering wheel. A man in a blue tie explained the paperwork, taxes, and the process. She could take it in installments or a lump sum. She chose the lump sum. After taxes, she walked out with just over $680,000 waiting in her bank account. But she didn't want to leave it there. Maybe it was paranoia. Maybe it was instinct. Or maybe she just didn't trust anything she couldn't see or touch anymore. So she went to the bank, sat across from a confused manager named Diane, and requested to withdraw it all. Every dollar. In cash? Diane blinked. Yes, Claire said calmly, her voice trembling only slightly. In cash. It took nearly 2 hours. They brought out stacks of bills in bundles, secured with thick paper bands. A black leather briefcase was offered, and Claire accepted it, running her fingers over the cool metal clasp like it was the Holy Grail. As she walked out of the bank, briefcase in hand, rain beginning to fall once more, she felt taller than she had in years. The weight of the case grounded her, reminding her that she wasn't dreaming. She wasn't poor anymore. She was free. But freedom, as she would soon learn, comes with a price. And someone had been watching. Claire had never carried that much money in her life. She clutched the briefcase so tightly her knuckles went pale, as if letting go might somehow make it vanish. She parked outside the diner, her old job, the one she'd just quit over the phone, and sat there in the car for 10 minutes, staring at the rain sliding down the windshield like tears. The thought of going inside, acting like nothing had changed, just to say goodbye, felt too surreal. Instead, she started driving aimlessly. The money felt like a live thing next to her, pulsing. A million tiny futures bundled into paper stacks. Her mind ran wild with ideas: pay off the house, bring Jeremy home for the summer, finally replace the water heater, take her sister on that road trip they'd always talked about before cancer took her. But as the clouds cleared, Claire noticed something strange in her rearview mirror. A dark SUV. It had been behind her for a while now. A little too long. She made an extra turn. Then another. Still there. Her grip tightened on the steering wheel. She told herself she was being ridiculous. It's just a coincidence. Just another car on a wet Tuesday morning. But when she pulled into the strip mall parking lot and the SUV pulled in right behind her, her stomach dropped. That's when she knew. She shoved the briefcase under the passenger seat and got out like nothing was wrong, walking toward the grocery store, glancing casually over her shoulder. Two men got out of the SUV. One tall, with a buzz cut. The other in a red windbreaker. They didn't smile. Didn't wave. Just followed. Her heart slammed against her ribs. She quickened her pace inside the store, weaving through aisles, pretending to shop. She waited near the frozen pizzas until she was sure they weren't behind her. Then she darted out a side exit and sprinted across the parking lot back to her car. She yanked the door open. The briefcase was gone. It took a full 5 seconds for the reality to register. Gone. She turned in circles, gasping, eyes scanning the lot. There was no one around. The SUV was pulling away slowly, disappearing behind a row of bushes. She screamed, a sharp, guttural sound of disbelief and rage, and chased after it, barefoot now, shoes discarded in the panic. Her legs gave out halfway across the lot, knees hitting the asphalt hard. People started to gather. Someone asked if she needed help. But Claire couldn't speak. Couldn't breathe. Her entire body was trembling. The briefcase, the money, her future, was gone. Stolen. The next few minutes were a blur. Someone called 911. A woman draped a jacket over her shoulders. A security guard from the grocery store asked questions she couldn't answer. She sat on the curb, drenched in rain and disbelief, staring at the empty space where her life used to be. A cop arrived. His name was Officer Lane. Young, maybe early 30s, with a calm demeanor and a notepad that seemed to never stop scribbling. "You're saying someone stole a briefcase from your car?" he asked gently. Claire nodded, her voice hoarse. "It had everything. Over $600,000. Lane blinked. "Cash?" She looked him dead in the eye. "Yes." He stared for a moment too long. She knew what he was thinking. Knew he didn't believe her. Not entirely. Not yet. But she didn't care. The truth was the truth. Her life had just been taken from her, snatched right out from under her while the ink on the dream was still wet. That night, Claire sat at the edge of her bed, still in the same damp clothes. The house felt colder than usual. Quieter. And more than anything, she felt like a fool. How could she have been so careless? How could she have let her guard down? But the worst part, the part that twisted her insides into knots, was having to call Jeremy and pretend like nothing had happened. She couldn't tell him. Not yet. Maybe not ever. He asked if she was okay, said her voice sounded weird. "I'm just tired," she told him, her voice thin. He told her he loved her before hanging up. And Claire sat in the dark for a long time after, staring at the wall, wondering if this was punishment, for daring to believe she could have more. For daring to hope. But hope, as she would come to learn, is a stubborn thing. And so is a mother who's lost everything. Because the very next morning, she walked into the police station. And she wasn't leaving without a fight. The police station smelled like stale coffee and old paper. Claire sat in the hard plastic chair across from Officer Lane, her arms folded tightly over her chest, her eyes sunken and red-rimmed. She hadn't slept, hadn't eaten. She was running on fumes and fury. Lane tapped his pen against his notepad. Let's start from the top again. Slowly this time. Claire told him everything, how she bought the ticket, how she went to the bank, how she asked for it in cash, the briefcase, the parking lot, the SUV, the men who followed her, how fast it all vanished. Lane's partner, Detective Rivas, a no-nonsense woman with sharp eyes and a raspy voice, joined halfway through. She asked fewer questions. She just watched. Any security cameras in that parking lot? Claire asked, hope threading into her voice. We're checking, Rivas said. But if they knew what they were doing, they might have avoided the angles. Claire's voice cracked. You think I made this up? No, Rivas said, almost too quickly. We've seen this before. People talk. Bank tellers, even strangers at the gas station. Somebody overhears something, next thing you know, you've got a target on your back. Claire's breath caught. You think someone at the bank? We're not ruling anything out. Lane gave her a small nod. We're gonna pull footage from the bank, the strip mall, maybe some traffic cameras. If there's a trail, we'll find it. It was something. Not a promise. But something. The next few days were excruciating. Claire stayed home, curtains drawn, phone clutched to her chest like a lifeline. Every sound outside made her jump. She replayed the moment over and over in her mind, if she had just parked somewhere else, if she had left the briefcase locked in the trunk, if she had turned left instead of right. Regret became her shadow. Jeremy called again. She tried to sound normal, but he could hear it, whatever it was she wasn't saying. Mom, are you sure you're okay? I'm fine, baby. Just, stressed. Work stuff. You don't have to do this alone, you know. She bit her tongue. If he knew what had happened, he'd come home. He'd drop everything. And she couldn't let that happen. She had already lost enough. Then, a breakthrough. Lane called her on a Wednesday evening. We pulled some footage, he said. You're not crazy. Claire's heart pounded. You found them? We found something. 2 men, matching your description, trailing you out of the bank. They followed you into the parking lot at the strip mall. Camera caught the license plate just barely. Her knees buckled. She had to sit down. We traced the SUV, Lane continued. It was reported stolen 2 days before. Dumped yesterday behind a warehouse on 43rd, wiped clean, but we've got a few leads. Some street camera footage shows them switching to another car nearby. So you're close, she whispered. We're closer than we were. But Claire, I have to be honest. They're smart. Professional. This wasn't random. That made it worse somehow. That meant someone had planned to take her money. Not just steal, it was orchestrated. Calculated. Someone had decided she wasn't allowed to win. That night, Claire sat in Jeremy's room. His posters were still on the walls. His old hoodie was slung over the back of his desk chair. She clutched it to her chest and cried silently. It wasn't about the money anymore. It was about what the money had meant. A way out. A new life. A chance to finally breathe. And someone had taken that from her. She stood up, wiped her tears, and looked in the mirror. Her reflection looked fragile, but under that, beneath the weary eyes and cracked exterior, there was fire. They could take her money. But they weren't going to take her peace. Not forever. She picked up the phone. Officer Lane. It's Claire. I want to help. I remember something, a detail. About the man in the red windbreaker. 2 days later, she sat behind a two-way mirror in the police station, her hands balled into fists in her lap. Lane and Rivas had brought in 3 men based on surveillance, tip-offs, and a facial recognition hit from a nearby pawn shop camera. One of them, man number 3, wore a red windbreaker when they picked him up. Same build. Same buzzed hair. Cold eyes. Lane stepped out and looked at her. You recognize him? Claire didn't even blink. That's him. Her voice shook. But not with fear. With certainty. With the start of justice. Because the wheel had finally begun to turn back in her direction. And the story, far from over, was about to come full circle. 3 weeks passed. 3 long, uncertain weeks filled with phone calls, detective meetings, and waiting. Claire's life had become a strange kind of limbo, half rooted in her old reality, half tiptoeing into the new one that had slipped from her fingers the moment that briefcase vanished. She kept busy cleaning, organizing closets she'd ignored for years, baking too much bread she barely ate. Anything to keep her hands moving, to keep her from spiraling back into the loss. But then, one Monday morning, just as the sun cut its first pale rays across her kitchen floor, the phone rang. Claire. It's Lane. We found them. She didn't breathe. They had the briefcase. Still had most of the money. Hidden in a locked storage unit 2 towns over. We got the guys on surveillance moving it this morning. Your ID was still in the pocket. She pressed a hand to her mouth. I thought it was gone, she whispered. So did they. But they got lazy. Started spending it. Left a trail. We followed it. Her knees gave out. She slid to the floor and cried, not the way she had when it was stolen, but something quieter, deeper. Relief, justice, the overwhelming reality that sometimes, just sometimes, the world gave a little back. At the station, she sat across from a steel table, the briefcase resting in front of her. It looked smaller than she remembered. Dirtier. Scuffed at the corners. Like it had been through something. She reached out, slowly, and flipped it open. The stacks were there. Not all of them, but most. Nearly $560,000, counted and verified by the department's evidence team. Claire didn't cry this time. She just nodded. And then asked the question that had been burning in her gut. Who were they? Lane looked at her carefully. Small-time crew. Mostly car thefts, low-level stuff. But they heard something. One of them has a cousin who works janitorial at the bank. Apparently, she overheard your request for cash. Claire swallowed hard. So, it was her. She's being questioned. She says she didn't mean for anything to happen, just mentioned it in passing. Might have been careless. But the men, they ran with it. Claire leaned back. It was hard to know how to feel. She wasn't angry, just tired. Tired of the idea that even when you did everything right, even when you finally got lucky, someone could still take it from you. But this time, she got it back. And that had to mean something. With the recovered funds returned to her account, and a warning from the police about keeping it there this time, Claire took a deep breath and started making quiet changes. She hired a lawyer. Paid off the mortgage. Installed a security system. She sent Jeremy a check with a handwritten note, no more student loans. He called her sobbing. She told him it was a long story, and someday, she'd tell him all of it. She donated $10,000 to the cancer center where her sister had spent her last days. Quietly. No press. Just a folded check and a thank you card. She bought a new car. Not flashy. Just something safe. Reliable. She went back to the diner, not to work, but to sit in a booth by the window and drink a cup of coffee that someone else refilled. And she watched the world pass by. No one would ever guess the woman in the quiet corner once carried a briefcase full of cash. That she had lost it all, and got it back. But she didn't need them to know. She didn't need to prove anything anymore. She had won the lottery twice, not just with the numbers, but with the fact that she still believed in herself when it was gone. The money was never the end of her story. It was just the beginning. And this time, Claire was holding on to hope, not like a burden, but like a key. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe, like the video, and share it with your friends. It really helps the channel grow, and I truly appreciate it. Thank you.